thank you for doing this. I'm really intrigued because you're a technical guy, and I don't tend to think of technical guys as doing what we might consider these days as a little woo-woo in terms of working with Gabby. Tell me a little bit about your background and kind of where you were before you were working with Gabby. Just kind of a sense of this is kind of origin story-ish.
So I come from an IT or technical background. I've worked at Apple twice on two different occasions, two different roles. Came out as a consultant and then started working with a lot of different companies. And then just through the networking side of things, I met Gabby probably 2 years ago, and then she gave me a free session, just so that I could learn about what she did. And I said to her, at some point I would love to just try, your sessions and then go through and, see what it's about and stuff like that. But, as in my role, there's not enough time in the day, right? Because I'm constantly busy with, lots of projects and stuff like that. So that's my background in terms of how I met her and stuff like that, and what I do.
Was there anything in particular you were struggling with that made Gabby appealing to you?
No, the thing with me on the networking side is when I see people or I want to really know what they do before I actually can refer them to somebody, right? So it was really to try and go through the experience, and then basically, if it was a good experience, then basically I would recommend them. If not, then I would, I wouldn't say anything. I just would, so, great, but I wouldn't be recommending that person to, another client or whatever like that, right? And I was doing that for like a year because I was meeting all these coaches and stuff like that. And there was a lot of sessions that I was on that were actually women only, for example. But again, I was in there just so that I could understand like what they were doing and things like that before, I would say, oh, Chris, you should go meet this person and things like that, right? Because I'm not about to just go and say, oh, go talk to this Chris guy or whatever, because, I hear he does good things, but unless I've experienced it, I'm not going to, just wholeheartedly give an endorsement, right? So, I make sure I go through those scenarios to make sure that it's worthwhile. So yeah, she offered something, and we got into this group session with a bunch of other members. And it turned out to be a phenomenal 8 weeks, actually, of sessions.
When you think about meeting Gabby in this networking group and hearing about what she does, what was your initial reaction to it? Were you like, oh my God, another person working with energy, or I wonder what that's... I mean, I think a lot of people are super skeptical, and I think it's fine if they are. I'm just curious what your take was prior to working with her, of the type of work that she did as you understood it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of people are skeptical. The only thing that brought me to her was because she, I think there is different energy, doing different things for individuals, okay? And the reason I believe that is I've experienced it through some physical things that I've done with injuries, okay? So I've played a lot of sports, and I've had lots of different things with different types of treatment, with alternative medicine versus, traditional, North American medicine and stuff like that. So things like, acupuncture, meditation, things like that. But there's a guy that I actually met that's local here, who's that I met through a friend, and he's a kung fu master, but he has the discipline in Chinese medicine. And when I went to see this guy, unless you were there and you actually experienced it, you never thought that energy existed outside of, you know, what you think was being generated by hydro and stuff like that. So when I went and did a session with this guy, I experienced it, and then it was something that I realized that, okay, there is something outside of just, you know, the norm and stuff like that. So when Gabby said that she was able to do this, I sort of believed in it in a sense, right? That, okay, there might be something there, but let's just see, you know, is she able to affect the things that she says she can affect, right? Okay. So, you know, yeah, there's a bit of skepticism, but the thing is, I've experienced the energy thing from, you know, other scenarios that I've lived through and stuff like that, right? So I come from it from a different background.
When you enrolled in this 8 week program, was there anything in particular that you were looking to kind of clean up or gain?
Yeah, there was, it was funny. There was one goal that I was trying to achieve in 2024. Okay, and the things that I do, I don't set a lot of goals because I'm pretty set in terms of what's already on the table, in terms of what I need to do from project standpoint and things like that. But there was one goal that I was trying to achieve, and for the entire year, I was not able to achieve the goal. Right, so the goal, right, and I'll explain what the goal is, and you'll get an idea why it was so hard. And it's not a goal that most people would set. You know, some people might say, I want to increase revenue by, you know, 10% or something like that, or I want to get 3 new clients or things like that. This goal was actually trying to find another partner in another SaaS platform that we could build upon, right? Okay, because I already run 3 separate SaaS platforms with a couple of partners in each one. So the goal is very unique in a sense that it's very hard to achieve, because there's got to be a lot of different things like synergies and can you work with this person and things like that, right? So when I got into Gabby's session, you know, she sort of went through these things. You know, what are the things that you're trying to, you know, get done for, you know, 2024, things like that, and stuff, right? Or actually, no, sorry, it was 2023. Sorry, so it was a year before that. So I said, yeah, I have this one goal that, you know, I'm trying to fulfill, and you know, she went and did her sessions and stuff like that, and then for some reason, on one of my networking calls, I met somebody in Australia, right? And we ended up going through a couple of meetings and stuff like that. And she ended up becoming my partner in another SaaS platform. And it was like one of these blocks, if you want to call it, like Gabby calls it, you know, that she got rid of. And, you know, I actually achieved the goal for that year. You know, so that was sort of like oh, maybe there's something here that, you know, really, you know, works, right? So, you know, so the goal was very hard, but the thing was, whatever she did, you know, it just sort of, you know, everything flowed and everything worked out, right?
By the way, I apologize. Just want you to know that when I'm looking down, I'm writing notes to myself, about what to ask you. So please don't think that I'm not paying attention.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
So the blocks, talk about the blocker blocks that you felt were there and how they got resolved from your perspective.
You know, again, I don't know that, you know, I had any blocks, right? You know, so she sees them at a totally different level, right? And then when she brought up the different blocks and stuff like that, I was like, oh, okay, I could see, you know, that event that happened, you know, years ago or whatever like that when I was a kid or whatever like that, right? So as she started going through this stuff, it was like, okay, she's seeing these things, right? And then she's seeing other things that, you know, I have no idea what, you know, or where they came from and stuff like that. So So if there were blocks, I didn't know about them, but she was the one who made me aware of them and stuff, right? And then she was the one who said that, I've cleared them up, out of your path or you know, energy, so that things can flow, the way they need to flow and stuff like that. So
When she talked about these kind of things, was there a resonance for you with it? Like, even though you may not have been aware of them prior to this, was there like, oh, I can kind of feel that, or feel that that might have been there?
not that I would feel them. I know, like, some of the events that she talked about resonated in the sense that, yeah, that was something there that happened. And then she actually seen some other things that were coming as well in what was in my life, in a sense. So the thing was, I didn't feel them from that standpoint, right? The thing that I was impressed with was, she brought up some stuff that she would not know, let's say, right? Okay, and that was the thing that was like, okay, wait a minute, we never talked about any of this stuff, right? And she started going into like deeper things with relatives and things like that were in my past, right? So that's the only thing I can say. Like, there wasn't a thing that I felt. The only thing was I seen different things happen after, right? From the sessions and stuff like that.
Were you surprised, or what was your reaction to her kind of uncovering these things that hadn't been talked about? Was it jarring, or was it like, this is right on, or what? How would you characterize that?
I basically looked at all of those sort of like, okay, great. If there was stuff that was there, and she cleared them, let's say, right, then I'm not going to worry about them, like, in that sense. My thing was really, okay, let's see what happens now that they are clear. And is stuff gonna change, right? From so let's say from a flow standpoint, right? Because her thing is getting rid of all the blocks so that things happen more naturally and easier and things like that, right? And what happened was, when that goal was achieved, right? My, like, literally the next year, 2024. It didn't stop. Like, it was constantly with like new projects and things like that, right? In terms of work, revenue, things like that. Things that I didn't have to go and do any type of, let's say, networking to try and build that business, right? It was customers that called from like 10 years ago, 7 years ago. There was like things that just started popping up for I have no idea with reasons, right? Why did they pick that year, or things to actually do changes to the systems and things like that. And then other people referred other work and stuff like that as well, right? So I think I was on a couple of calls where Gabby was there, and I said to the crowd, I said, look, if you haven't experienced this thing with Gabby, you might want to try it, because what we went through, right? I haven't had one, like, any time off, let's say, from a vacation standpoint, right? Because there's been so much work, right? Constantly coming in, right? One after the next, from a project standpoint. So and then even going up until this last Christmas in December, everybody was sort of slowing down a bit, and I was still trying to catch up with 4 projects that I still had on my plate. And then I got another huge lead from another law firm, right? From another consultant that I did some work with 5 years ago, right? And all of a sudden, this guy out of the blue comes in with a new referral, right? So, like, literally, it hasn't stopped, right, for like the last year, since 2023.
How would you characterize, like, as awesome as that is, how would you characterize are there changes in how you feel as you walk in the world as a result of the work with Gabby? Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Um, no, not really. Like I have a
Okay.
pretty uh, laid back attitude in a sense, right? You know, things are going to happen for whatever reason. Whether she was the one who manifested the changes or whatever. But there are literally guys that I haven't, like, I barely remember some of these guys that contacted me, right? You know what I mean? I had a private school. The IT guy called me, and he had met me 4 years ago, right? You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, like, there was this need for this extra work and stuff like that, right? So we, it was again like just guys that again I'm not like guys that on my LinkedIn profiles and stuff like that. Half the people I don't know because I meet them because of all the presentations that I did in the past with Apple. And then they're coming out of the woodwork just going, hey Dave, I remember your presentation, blah blah blah, and this and blah, can you help us out and stuff like that, right? And I think that's something. Again, they could have went anywhere else as well, right? Given like 4 years have passed, right? And stuff like that, right, or more. I have no idea why they're coming out of the woodwork now and stuff like that. So
It's almost like the leads pipes have been cleared out, and
yeah,
there
yeah,
you are, and things just seem to be flowing in.
yeah, yeah.
So
It was funny. I was in a bid on a project with a client, and I was up against another consultant who had a team of programmers. So literally, they literally said, it will take this amount of time with a team of programmers that they had on staff. They actually mocked up some test pages, and stuff like that. And then the owner said to me, so Dave, if you were to do this, like, how long would it take? And I said, well, I'm guessing this amount of time and stuff like that. And then I gave him the rates and all this kind of stuff. And I think the other guys were cheaper, okay? Because, a lot of these overseas programmers, they're at a different rate and they have teams of guys and stuff like that, right? But the owner decided to go with me on the project, right? And this was literally in the last 2 months, right? So again, that's another example of something where, I'm up against, competition and something, and then, I ended up getting the project, right?
if you look at just kind of how things have been better since you did this course, do you find that you're kind of just, well, you said laid back and maybe that's it. Do you find that you're more laid back? Do you feel like, I'm lighter in business, I'm less concerned or fearful, or any of that fit for you, or something similar?
No, not really. My attitude has always been like that. So, I always sort of, I have this couple of simple rules, right? If I come down a road and there's two different paths, right? Okay, and there's one path that I always go down, and there's a new path. I always go down the new path, right? So, I'm like that, right? I'm not worried about, making sure that, it's the same old thing. You know what I mean? So, when I did this thing with, it was like I said to Gabby, I'm going to go through this one day with you, and then, when we did, it was like, oh, okay, it was like, wow, big change, right? Maybe I should have did this earlier, or maybe not, but again, it would have caused a lot more work, let's say, right? So there's, something there, but it's hard, again, it's energy, right? It's hard to put your finger on it, and that's the issue, right? So until you experience it, just like I did with this Master Lee guy, right? It's like, okay, until you, like, I need to see it, right? Okay, to believe it. So with the Master Lee guy, I seen the energy, right? Okay, that he was able to produce, right? With Gabby, I was able to see changes without me doing hardly anything. And some of the networking guys said, Dave, you haven't been here in like months and stuff like that. And I said, yeah, because I've been really busy, right? Every time I spend an hour in a networking session or whatever like that, that's an hour of billings that you're letting go and stuff like that, right? So it's very hard, right, to do that, right? And I haven't had to go and actively go out and try and build more clients and things like that, right? Which is good, knock on wood, right? Or I have to just get back on another session with Gabby, right? If there's any blocks and stuff like that, right? So.
How's that feel? Like to have that, to be in that place of, oh man, I'm not having to hustle nearly the way I did, and it just seems to kind of appear.
It feels good. It can be a little bit overwhelming if you don't have a lot of the processes and systems in place to be able to deal with them. And what I do is not like a typical person where they're just like, let's say, signing a new client up and getting them into their system and stuff like that. Like I'm actually building out things that actually get implemented, and then you see these things live in these companies and stuff like that, right? So and these are not something that you do in a day sort of thing, right? Some of them take weeks and stuff like that to investigate all of the different issues that they may have with existing systems and things like that, and then making sure everything's airtight from a security standpoint, and so yeah, they're not. I'm not the typical entrepreneur in that sense, right? Where they're just trying to get somebody in, right? And somebody always says, "So Dave, why don't you hire more guys?" I said, "Yeah, it's hard finding guys that do what I do, right? If they're good as me, they're going to do it on their own, right? Technically, right? So that's the hard part. So, and yeah, I use as much AI as I can to automate a lot of stuff, right? Especially on the testing side and debugging and stuff like that, right? The monotonous work, right? So yeah, I can show people those things in terms of what they can do and how to automate things and stuff, so that you're not paying people to do it, because technology doesn't sleep, right?
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
Okay, two last questions and then one just quick follow-up. If you were to describe to somebody, whether they were a skeptic or not about what Gabby did, what would you say about the course and the process?
The course is very, it's non-threatening in the sense. I would say that really you don't have a lot to lose by doing the session or sessions. She does a couple of free sessions as well from time to time, right? But the thing is, in those free sessions, you have to be willing to be vulnerable, right? Because she'll bring up certain things that you may not want exposed, right? In those sessions. So even in our group sessions, right? She brought up things that the other 4 members heard, right, about my life, and just like vice versa. So those are things that you sort of have to be willing to, let's say, let the guard down a bit, right? And because we did that in that group session, the 5 of us have a special connection, because we sort of know some of the intimate secrets of the other individuals now and stuff, right? But if you do a private session, then like I said, you have nothing really to lose, right? I think there's a huge gain, and there's a lot of people that I've talked to that have done sessions with Gabby, and I've not heard any negative things at all, right, from anybody.
One thing in regards to the group side of it, You said that now you have this bond with these other four people. What do you think the value of being in a group is versus maybe doing individual from your standpoint?
Um, the group thing, it gives you, it's like, when you're trying to build a friendship up over a time with somebody, you might find out certain things about that individual over, a span of a year or two or whatever, right? And sometimes you never even get to certain stages in that friendship in that sense, right? But in our 8 week or our 8 sessions, a lot of exposure came out of those sessions. So you sort of got very deep with a lot of different people very quickly, right? And then you sort of felt different things about that individual as well, right? So I think that's a benefit, only if you're able to let go of your guard, right? Okay. So if you're not that type of person, then I don't think that is going to work for you in a group session. Okay. And the other thing too is, you find out certain things about certain individuals in those sessions as well, right? So it's good and bad, because it may not be that all 5 people or whatever the number is that everybody bonds with, right? You might only bond with 1 or 2 of the different people and stuff like that, right? Okay, so that also is some another possibility, let's say, in those group sessions and stuff like that. And then the other thing is, we've been able to keep the sessions going by doing things like, every quarter we'll have like a breakfast meeting where we all get together again and just share stories and things like that and things like that, right? So when Gabby actually came to town, we actually went out for dinner, just our group with her and stuff like that as well. And so there's again, a different set of friends that you know at a different level, because you've gone through this experience, right? So I think there's positives, but again, you have to be that type of individual.
I love that. Okay, last thing in regards to this. When you think about Gabby, how would you characterize her to somebody who's like, who's this Gabby gal? Tell me about her.
She's not, the first time I met her, I think, we were on a session. She didn't oversell or anything, just basically said, hey, there are these little things that, people don't realize. So I was curious, because if I'm going to recommend, like I said, any consultant or any coach or whatever, I need to see what, they provide. So there wasn't like, any overly, hey, this is me, I can do all these great things and things like that. She just, sort of just pretty low key mentions it, and then if you're curious, then let's go and do it, and then the results speak for themselves, really.
I get the sense. I think of a lot of people who do the kind of work that she does, or say they do the kind of work that she does, and I feel like they're trying to sell this aura of, David, this is who I am, and this is what I can bring to the table. And I've never had any sense of that with Gabby. Like, she's just who she is, and yet you can feel there's something powerful there. And is that a fair statement from your standpoint?
Yes, I think she doesn't go into other things that she's not involved in. She focuses on what she's trying to see in you, and then works towards getting those cleared up, right? And yeah, I get a lot of the life coaches in the sense that, yeah, this is what we do, and this is what I'm able to do, and things like that, and and they're trying, like you said, they try and oversell, to a degree and stuff like that. But then, my thing is, they're there because they've, gone through, some training, and blah, 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 and, they're taking somebody's program or whatever like that. I don't know that, she has a program or, that exists. I have not seen another Gabby in any of the networking groups that I've been in and stuff like that, right? You know what I mean? I've seen a ton of life coaches, right? Okay. Just like real estate agents or insurance agents or whatever, right? There's, a lot of those, right? But the thing that she does, I have not seen. So,
My takeaway from her is that she feels incredibly authentic, and never feels like there's an underlying agenda other than, hey, how can I help you? And that there's just some knowing that she can do this.
yeah.
Okay. What kind of do you do ERP platforms, that sort of thing?
I do ERP, CRM, SaaS build outs. So, if you have
What's
recurring revenue like software as a service like QuickBooks, then, you can build out a platform that you end up, owning in a sense. And then a lot of the systems that I built out, these have been running in some cases for 20 years in some clients. Okay, so if you think about software in companies, right, they'll get into a platform, and a lot of times the platform will get obsolete or disappear after X number of years, right? Which then leads them to investing in a new platform, retraining, things like that. So if I look at like this doctor's office or this union that I deal with, right, they're running the same CRM, ERP system for the last 20 years, right? And as changes come, we just add more to the system or tweak it and stuff. So they have gotten, let's say, huge, return on investment in terms of like the platform, the software, not retraining staff, things like that. I'm in like everything that a company can, let's say, streamline, and get efficiencies. Then that means they don't have to hire as many bodies, right? They go, so Dave, what's your, they ask in a network meeting, so, how can we help, or, what is your typical client that you're looking for? And I basically tell them, guys that are looking to hire people are the guys that I'm looking to talk to, right? Because that means, their efficiencies are probably not the greatest, and they're probably needing to hire bodies to actually do more business or process more or whatever like that, right? Okay, yeah.
Do you work in Salesforce much?
I've worked in Salesforce when I was at Apple. I think it's one of the worst systems out there in terms of the way the system works. And the example I can use is, when I was at Apple, when you're able to do a quote in 2 minutes in the system we were in, and then we switched to Salesforce and it took us 30 minutes to do the same quote.
Yep.
To me, that is a bad system.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's, the only reason why they're there is because all the big corporate guys think that's the,
Yep.
cat's ass, right, from a product standpoint. And, and I would argue, no, if I go from 2 minutes to 30, that means, the efficiencies have gone down, and you've cost me money, right, from a,
And you've got annoyed employees to boot, don't you?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Anything else we should be chatting about before we wrap up, David? Anything I might have missed?
no, not that I can think of. Yeah, it's great that you're doing this stuff for her, right? I think she's trying to build out a bit, in that sense. And like you said, there's a lot of skeptical people, right? And you gotta sort of feel it, right? And you know, like I said, you got really nothing to lose, right? You know, when you think about it, right? You know, so.
Right on. David, I really appreciate your time.